Welcome back to another Adventure Box podcast. That's right. We are doing an Adventure Box as a curriculum, but we're not all about just a curriculum. We want to have fun with history and intrigue and mystery. Mystery and history. Maybe we should call it that. Maybe that should be our tagline. This is our Mystery and History podcast. That just sounds really good. Except then we'll miss the whole part of this whole program, which is we have an adventure box. In the adventure box, you have a curriculum. It's actually right here. Look at this. Right here. You get a curriculum. This is great because you're able to go through history and actually have fun with it while you do it. Because it's not just a curriculum that's in there. It's not just reading. You got games. You got activities. You've got cross-curricular, which means basically you have math in history. You have science projects, biology, physics, chemistry, earth science, human science. The list goes on and on. You have so much in this box that it is so fun to be able to look through each time. It's like unboxing history, just like opening up and, whoa, what's in here this time? Okay. You also have some activities and crafts and things like that are in there and will be in the next one as well. But this one is about American ancient history. This is why it's so intriguing. No, I should have opened up, but I wanted to open up the normal way that we open up. I wanted to open up like this. Let me bring this picture up because this is an amazing picture. Dun, dun, dun. What would it be like if you entered the jungle, walked a few days into the jungle, very tired in the jungle, when you flew over this area that you didn't see anything because the jungle was so overgrown, and you come around a corner and all of a sudden you see, dun dun dun, one of the temples from the Mayan culture, just sitting there with the mist of the morning coming out. Now it's hot. It's pretty humid already in the day. And yet you come to this mysterious place and you have no idea what this could be. Well, this is just the start of the Mayan civilization. So this is the part that I get really excited about. I get excited about the imagination of what could have been if I had been an archaeologist working down in South America, being able to work among the Mayan culture, the Aztec culture, or even better, if I could find it, the Olmec culture. But that was well before the Mayas and the Aztec. Again, in the Mexico area for Aztecs, Mayas. Actually, I might as well show you the next picture. This one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to close this one. But here is the amazing part about history. This is the Mayan civilization. Really? All those temples? Yeah. If you were to walk through the jungles of this area, you would literally see miles and miles of temples. Now again, this is over like 1,000 miles, a few thousand miles to see all these temples. But there are temples upon temples upon temples in each of these places. Some of them that you don't even see. These are other ruins. If you're looking at the map, you'd see all these ruins. If you're not looking at the map, just imagine you have a map that's basically full of different temples, all from the Mayans. Now, they didn't know much about the Mayas when they first started back in the mid to late 1800s. But now we expect that we actually know a fairly good amount. Again, a lot of theory. But with that, some fairly good understanding of what we're learning about. So, these are the different temples. Why are the temples so important? It's because in the Maya culture, religion was very important. It wasn't the macaw. It wasn't all these different gods. Though they did have that at one point. They actually went back. If you go back further in their history, the potential is that they actually started off with one god. And that grew into many gods, depending on which area of the Maya civilization you were from. Now, you go to one temple and it's about someone. You go to another temple and it's about another person. So all of these different experiences that all of these different temples were about This is what makes archaeology so fascinating, because you might see a religion at this one temple, and then you go a few hundred miles west into another temple, and it's a completely different understanding. Now, some of them were based off the same, because a lot of times when you had a civilization, what would happen? You'd have a leader, right? That leader would rule the civilization, sometimes with iron fist, sometimes with love and understanding. But every time a new leader came into power, most of the times, a lot of times, they would destroy the records of all those in the past because they wanted to be their civilization, their kingdom, their religion. So especially those with the iron fist, these were people that destroyed the records. I'm going to bypass actually a few because I wanted to go talk about this. This, which you see here, and I'll actually blow it up for you guys. This is one of the 4 last codexes of the Maya people. Now, that was the article that I read was probably 10 years old. So maybe they found additional ones. But at that point, there was only 4 codexes. What in the world, Zach, is a codex? A codex is like a book of history, a book of their faith, a book of their religion, a book of whatever they wanted to write about. Sometimes we don't even know what it was about. Because the writings in there are, again, each inscription. If you're looking at our YouTube channel, you'll see this. If you're not, you can see it online. Each of these images on the codexes is different. And each one is supposed to tell a story within each inscription, which then makes up a larger story. But the problem is that we do not have a transcription. We have the best that we have. And yes, archaeologists have figured out what some of them mean. But there are things in here that we will never fully understand. And you know what? Truthfully, that's okay. Because we don't control what happened in the past. We just try to understand it. So, in the codexes were the history of these people. And what would happen when you had a person, a leader that came in with the iron fist? They would come in and destroy the codexes. Any record that was out there, even in rock, they would try to destroy so they could create their own civilization built on what they imagined. New gods, new faith, new ruling, all these different things. So the rulers, the people, did not like the change in the ruling class. They were okay with one ruling class because the next one that comes in is going to change everything. And talk about a headache. Holy cow. Talk about the politics of today. If a Republican comes in when there's a Democrat, there's huge headaches. And trying to understand what the next 4 years is about. Well, we have a government that's set up. It doesn't matter what the leader is. In the Mayas, it was the opposite. Their government was based on their leader. And so if you weren't used to that leader, if you did not know or believe that you knew what was happening in the next 8, 10, 12, 15, 20, 50 years, that's a lot of confusion. And yet the Mayas had to understand how to make it through all these different leaders. So, going back to this, I wanted to show you some of the temples. One of the biggest things to know about ancient Mesoamerica. Sorry, we did that again like yesterday. The big thing to understand when it came to Mesoamerica is that their faith is what kept them sane. Their faith was what a lot of things were built off of. Some of the temples that you'll see, they're like temples that were built, and then those that came into control afterwards would build a temple right on top of it, like covering the entire thing. And then the person that would come after that would make a bigger temple based on top of that. So trying to understand the Mayas really depends on who you're talking to, what time you're talking to them, again back in history, and where you're talking to. because each region was like different factions of the Maya civilization. Even though the Maya civilization ruled the whole land, depending on who the leader was, each location was actually a little bit different. Much like you'd find in North America, you'd had so many different tribes, but each of them were slightly different. They were not this, just because you're a Shoshone did not mean you believed everything that the Shoshones from another group or another area believed. There were changes, there were differences. Same thing in Mesoamerica. A lot of these people, they broke off. They went from one group and broke off into separate groups because they wanted to be able to live the way that they believed. Again, sometimes you have leaders with iron fists that don't let you do that. Sometimes you do have leaderships that let you do that, especially depending on what value you have in the civilization. If you're actually in a culture, in an area that's fertile and provides food for the Mayas, before the government, then they are all about treating you well. Or, again, depending on the iron fist, they could actually try to take you over in order for you to do exactly how they want you to do it. So, it's very interesting. So again, you don't have to go into a mindset with we're Americans or we're British, or where was the other one? Or we're Australian, because those are the three countries that use historical conquest a lot. It's not just about that. It's who do they, in their area, what do they believe in that area? So you could be in the United States. We all basically have the same understanding and such. Basically, that's what the school education system does. It makes everything completely static. Doesn't like when there's different voices or different opinions on things. But when you go back to the Mayas, each one was separate. Okay, so these temples, depending on which temple you went to, basically dictates what they believed in. And it depends, again, what the ruler is. So you might go to this one. You might be going to this one. Now, this is an interesting one. This is the Temple of the Inscription. The Temple of the Inscription was, I think it was called the Great, let me see, Temple of the Inscription. Inscription? Yeah, Inscription. It was in Palenque. Now, this is interesting because this temple was about, it was the largest Mesoamerican stepped temple structure pre-Columbus, which actually that's up to when they stopped doing the temples. But it was, again, one of the largest Mayan temples. It's the best preserved structure as well. Now, this doesn't look, if you look carefully, I don't know if you can see in the video. So whether you're in the podcast or you're watching the video, it doesn't really matter. You can see there's so much falling apart off of this temple. But to know that these are usually temples inside of temples, and as they go into these temples, you can actually see that they're building one on top of another. So this is actually has a crypt inside. Also to know, some archaeologists like to say this is the Temple of the Sun. Yeah, so ongoing, these are very important things to understand, that, again, it depends on the time and the place and the people, location, basically, of what they actually believed. So I'm not going to go too much into actually what they believed. But what I will go into is some of the great things that they did. Here's another picture of another Maya civilization or city. We talked about the codexes. Their artwork was amazing for what they had. Every piece of art was used, or they used materials that were completely natural. There was no synthetics. There were no artificials back there. Everything was built off of whatever they found in the jungle or where they lived. So if they chipped them out of the artwork out of the rock, again, it would deteriorate. Some would say that this was actually at some point colored. So you'd actually see bright colors on there, which would have been painted with natural resources, fruits, vegetables, roots, things like that. And so in these, again, remember you saw the codex. Bring up the codex again. This is the codex. It's the writings of the Mayas. Look at the images. They actually have inscriptions all around the images. It's not just one or two people in there. It is filled with inscriptions. So when the new leaders came in, usually they would destroy some of these and they'd have to recarve them. So think of the carvings over carvings over carvings. Sometimes they just covered up the buildings with new buildings. It's a great way of leveling out or making a temple disappear and all of its drawings. But there's some amazing artwork that the Mayas had created. And so you'll find this all over southern Mexico. Again, let's actually go to, I'm going to bring up a larger map. But it's going to be, so this is one of the temples. You zoom out, and there's actually these all over this area. You go out further. Now remember yesterday we were talking about the Olmecs. They were basically down here in the Veracruz area. Veracruz is basically when you come down the eastern side of Mexico. It comes down to a bowl and then up to a peninsula called the Yucatan Peninsula and then back down. Now in Mexico, this is all Mexico, this area. You have again the Olmecs in the bottom of the bowl, while the Aztecs were on the west side of the bowl, the left-hand side of the bowl, and on the right-hand side of the bowl you have the Maya. Now, some of the land in between was actually kept completely alone. The potential is that there was actually a large war, which we talked about last time, where it would have actually kept people away because of the dead bodies and things, remains. Again, these are cultures that are somewhat superstitious in some ways, somewhat religiously strong in the ways that their life is controlled by their faith. And so you have a lot of these different places all over the place. So again, if you need a further outlook, this is the United States. Down south, it's Mexico. And then you come down into the Maya area. And over here, the picture that I was first showing you on the map was actually in Guatemala. I have friends that live down in Guatemala. There's also Belize that's right next to that, and Honduras and El Salvador, basically all in that area, right on the southern end of Mexico. Okay, so I showed you that. Let's go back to the artwork. So this is just to show you where some of these things are. Now the cities, again, these were great engineers. We put together cities that are straight and such, but we have machines that allow us to do it. We have lasers and survey equipment. In this, if you have the picture in front of you, these are the cities that they produced. Everything was in straight lines. They were so advanced for who they were. Again, their advancement was based on their survival. And so everything in this area was basically as straight as possible as you could do by hand without having the modern technology that we had. So they were quite advanced when it comes to their architecture and their structure. Okay, just to explain this little jump, we actually had to re-record this area because my team had actually found some other information about this calendar. Okay, so this is the Maya calendar, not to be confused with the Aztec calendar, which we'll go over tomorrow. The Maya calendar is very fascinating. It is amazingly accurate, and people still use it to today. Now, not the ancient ones. We actually, funny enough, interesting enough, we don't have any replicas of what the calendar actually looked like back a long time ago. This is a drawing of it, but we are not even quite sure exactly how it looked. We just know from it being passed down from generation to generation until these days what the Maya calendar actually looks like. So this is not accurate, but there's nothing out there. In the archaeology that we found, actually I'm going to bring up a picture. I was going to show it till a little bit later, but we don't actually have the full calendar. What we have, oops, Let me put this in another form. Let me open up so you can see this. Open with photo. Here we go. This is a replica of what we have today. That's it. That kind of marking, that kind of cutout. Now, we have different parts of it. And so if you look, this is most likely what it would have looked like a little bit more in detail. So this is the black and white of what this shows. So we don't actually have the whole thing. We just have parts and pieces of what it could look like. But those in later years actually replicated their own. And so they were able to have a similar of what they would think of the calendar looking like. Okay, so this is fascinating. Remember how I've been telling you, this is all part of mystery. This is all what archaeology and history is about. It's the mystery of what was actually happening, and then the mystery of what was going through the person's mind when they were doing it. It's not about names and dates. Those are the simple things that schools want you to do because they want you to learn the chronological order of things. But it's so much more. Okay, so I'm going to close this one so we can get back to here. Okay, so this is the image of what we have the calendar look like. Now, how does this actually work as a calendar? That makes no sense whatsoever. But actually, this is, again, not the full thing. Look at the next one. Okay, so this is a toy. This is a toy calendar. But do you see all these moving parts? Every part of the calendar was to be moved according to different time periods. Now, there is a 260-day rotation with it that's within a 365 rotation. And the reason why that is because the 365 is just like our days. They mapped out exactly what our calendar is. This was more of each time they made these, the theory is every time they made these, they would make another inscription. They would do a drawing and show, oh, I wish I had it. There was a really interesting drawing they were showing me. It basically had, it was a piece of art. It was a replica. So I don't know if this actually exists. But they had the inner ring, the numbers. Then they had a set of these images underneath that. And then they had a set of these numbers beyond that. And then another set of these. And it was drawn out like every day was drawn out. Now, again, I don't know if that was a replica because it's not an actual piece of artifact. It's not an actual artifact. It was a drawing by someone. It was a painting by someone, I think actually it was. So this shows you basically how the Maya calendar worked. You would actually rotate all the different parts and pieces. The Aztecs are very similar to this, but this is the Maya. Now, in the Maya, this is actually, again, how it worked. You would have these different days line up with these different icons. And it would work like a cog inside of a larger cog. And then each of these cogs would line up to each other. And so you'd actually be able to say on this day, like, for instance, they didn't use months like we do. In this month, on this day, this thing happened. Okay, so that's basically what our calendar is, except ours is usually, you see it in a square. But this one, it's like on this month, on this day, going to another ring, in this year, during this season or such, this is what was happening. How amazing is that? So they, again, like I was telling you, they are so advanced, but their advancements were based on their survival, what they needed to do in order to survive. Now, the question is, what do these images actually mean? So these are some of the glyphs that are possible glyphs that would have been on the larger calendar. So again, I have it right here. This glyph right here could have been one of these glyphs that you would have found on the calendar. Actually, the one that we see the stones on, that's a real one. These ones are based on other drawings that they had of the potentially the same calendar. At the same time, remember, each temple for the Maya were different, depending on the region, depending on the people, but they had very big similarities. So exactly who knows? So in here, you have a lot of different glyphs that were created in order to keep time. months, dates, years, and so forth. And again, this is what it looks like. So in the end, we're not exactly sure how the Maya calendar actually worked. We have an assumption, we have a theory based on these. Again, these are based on the writings of the older Maya people, especially after the Spanish took them over. And a lot of things were destroyed, not just during the Spanish, but every leader that came in, they continued to destroy different things and rewrite their history. So what does it actually mean? We're not 100% sure. This is, again, the mystery that comes with this. But this I would love to go see. Now I'm going to Machu Picchu. I'm not going to, I don't remember where this was. I had just written it down. But these types of artifacts would be so fascinating to see. And this is why if you're near a museum, go to a museum. Enjoy what's inside. Now let's go back to the Mayas. The Mayas were very, very advanced. There's some other advancements I'm about to talk to when we get back to the regular video that I was showing you. So we're going to go back to that right now. So they have hieroglyphics. They have great writing. We saw that with the codexes and their carvings. We see that they have astronomy, calendars, those type of things. We saw it in their architecture and urban development. Now here's one other one. How about their social organization? Again, this is well past the Neolithic era, which again, we were telling you was when all the random nomads and even groups of people started settling in one place. And they created new tribes and villages and civilizations. That was the beginning of it. The Olmecs were somewhat during the beginning of that time, creating a civilization, a major civilization during the time. This is 1,000 years later. This is around, 700 BC? Let me see if I have my right. Yeah, 700 BC is when supposedly they flourished. So that the Mayas came in and flourished during this time. Now, there's not quite a complete understanding if it was actually flourishing, if these were multiple groups that were at this time. The potential is that they flourished somewhere between 750 and 400 BC. Okay, so now keep going. What else they have? Well, at some point, they had a decline. Now, if you know the Maya civilization, the history here, and you know future history, which we haven't talked about, you'll know that the Spanish came in and started taking over the Mayas. But interesting enough, you're going to learn this a little bit in the future. But it took like 4 or 5 different explorers to try to take over the Mayas. The Aztec took one. It took Cortez to break in and destroy their civilization. So there are a lot of different parts of the decline. And actually, before Columbus came, they were already on the decline. It's said that around 800 to 900 AD, that actually the countries started to separate, started breaking off from one unified government, as we were talking about before, into many governments and organizations. So how exactly they broke apart before Columbus and before the Spanish, it's not 100% understood. But we do understand that they started to abandon many other southern cities. So maybe it was climate. But they also abandoned some of their northern cities. They abandoned some of their larger cities. They abandoned some of their smaller cities. Why in the world did they deteriorate so much? And again, they started deteriorating 800 years before Columbus. 600 years before even Columbus came, and about 800 years before they were actually conquered. So this was a culture at this point, because there was no centralized civilization anymore, because they had all broken up into their own. All, as far as we know, known as the Maya, because they were in that area of the Maya people. So what was happening during this time? All right, let's think. Globally, during maybe 500 years before the turn of the century, we had, turn of the century, we had, let's see. I'm going into the curriculum, so you're going to be able to read about this more. But we had in the ancient worlds, we had the Greek archaic period. We had the Persian Empire. You know, the same Persians that took over Israel and fought with Mesopotamia. You had the Roman Republic starting. So this is when they just started, before becoming an empire, and then into becoming an empire before the Mayas fell apart. Israel was going through its Iron Age about 1000 to 586 BC. You have the Maurya people in India. They were actually creating their civilization between 320 and 185 BC. Then we go in the timeline. We actually go further into near the end of the Maya people, including the rise of Islam, the Chinese dynasties, the Viking era. So that's the kind of stretch from where people are just starting to really organize in these countries to where they're completely flourishing and even destroying each other on the other end. Nearing the end of the Mayas, pre-Columbus, you also have Normans' conquest of England and such. And how about the Black Plague? That was all before Christopher Columbus came and the Spanish came and destroyed the Mayas. We'll say destroyed the Mayas. Okay, so we go more into the origin and the decline of them. But going into this, there are some other things you need to be able to understand, including this is when this part of the chapter, we're like halfway through the curriculum, and we finally give you an actual person that you can look at when it comes to a civilization. Mostly because we don't have records of anyone in the past who were great leaders or great artists or great whatever of these civilizations, because they didn't keep records back then. Even in North America, by this point, by the time of Columbus, a lot of them did not keep records. They did not have a writing system to keep records. So with the Maya, they did. They had their codex. But you can't really, it's really hard to tell who's who when it comes to the codex, because of the inscriptions don't have a translator with them. But you do have some people that you need to know about. Now, these are actual people that you can actually find out online and find more information on. But in the curriculum, you're going to find out about these people. And you also have a card on a few of these people as well. The first one is Tikal. Now, I'm not going to try to butcher his... Actually, no, let's do it. It might be fun. Hey, let's do this. So I'm going to try to read his name. I'm going to butcher it just out of respect. I'm going to say that up front. I do not mean to butcher it. But here we go. Let's try to say this word. And you can look this up in your curriculum. It's Kinich Janab Tikal. In other words, his name is, at least for us, Tikal the Great. Now, he's actually one of your cards in the expansion pack that you're going to get. But in here, you're going to learn about him and why he's significant. He was one of the most significant rulers of the city-state of Palenque. Again, we showed you one of the temples that was in Palenque. Ascended to the throne, and he's actually the one that created the Temple of Inscription, which housed his inevitable tomb when he died. So this is really interesting to learn about him. But what's also really fun to understand, there was a lady at the same time, actually slightly before him. Her name was Lady Sakkuk. Sorry, I got something in my throat. I should have gotten some water. Lady Sakkuk was the mother of Tikal the Great and served as the regent, because when Tikal came into power, he was a child. He was a very young child. So she played a essential role in his life, allowing it to be able to flourish. But when he became old enough, she still wanted power and still tried to control him. Now, it's not in the curriculum, but you can look this up. The legend is Tikal became very, very jealous that his mom was trying to control him and control the whole civilization by controlling him. And so out of his greed, envy, wisdom, I don't know. You pick, because we don't have the inscriptions on this. He actually killed his mom. Or no, I don't think he killed his mom. He allowed his mom to be killed because of everything that was happening. You'll learn about a lot of other people with some great cities, about like the king of Tikal. You're going to learn about actually a lot of females in this civilization as well, because this civilization was one that actually allowed for women religious leaders, women leaders, women in a lot of different aspects outside of the general household. This is around 600 AD to about 800 AD. So you can read about some of these people in the curriculum. And you're also going to learn the importance of why learning about these people is so important in understanding the actual Maya people. So stuff like, well, I'll let you read it. There's a lot of great information on here. Now, here's the part that I really enjoy. I'm really excited about, and that is the archaeology. Now, archaeology during this time was actually, let's see if I actually have any more pictures. Oh yeah, I was going to talk a little bit more about the calendar. Look it up. It's some great information. But let's go back to here. Archaeology. Archaeology. I love archaeology. It is one of my favorite topics when I was younger. Now, if you remember my story, I came out of high school hating history. But I hated how it was taught. Not that I hated history itself. So coming into archaeology, fascinating stuff. Because it's like, again, I mentioned this yesterday, it's like Christmas. You don't know what you're going to find until you open it up. And then you're going to find things that you never thought you would find. So whether it's excavating a piece of land, moving away all the dirt and finding artifacts and things, that's like Christmas. Whether it's going into one of the temples and breaking into some of their tombs, that would be an interesting job. A tomb raider. A scientist that collects the artifacts for museums. Yes, that's exactly what they're called. Not tomb raiders. Okay, anyways, we have a lot of archaeological sites that you're going to want to read up on when it comes to this. And also some of the things that they do today in order to understand what they're learning about. So I'm going to leave that to you to read that portion. Also, life lessons. Again, like every chapter, there will be an area of life lessons. These are lessons that you can learn from learning about the Maya, learning about the Aztecs, and so forth, based on who they were. So some of the important things is lessons that you'll learn: environmental stewardship, social and political organizations, cultural and artistic expression, all these things. So there's a lot of great things to learn about in here. But here's the part, there's one other part, and that's the vocabulary. Some of us don't like to learn about vocabulary, but I'll tell you one thing. When it comes to learning ancient American history, you want to know the vocabulary. You want to know what they're talking about. Hieroglyphics. If I said that, you would know, because it was the carvings into the wall, creating hieroglyphics. The codexes, the inscriptions could be considered hieroglyphics. Astronomy. You like the stars? You like looking at the stars? These people knew the stars. Long count calendars. Tikal as the location. Deforestation. What is that? Do we do that today? Yes, we do. And there's all these different other things that happen in this. One thing you're going to learn is the ball game. The ball game, in the vocabulary, it's actually called the ball court, because they're focusing on the court. But the ball game is their entertainment in the Maya civilization. So that's really interesting. We don't actually know if the Olmecs had a ball game like this. So the understanding of what those caps were on the colossal heads, again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, look back to yesterday. That's the interesting thing. If they didn't have the ball game, those helmets were not for that. So what were those hats? What were the carvings on top of the colossal heads? Intriguing. What is it? What do you think? I'd love to hear your theories. Okay, so some of the great activities that are in here. I'm going to focus on one, because I'm really excited about these. I'm going to do this with my kids. It's creating inscriptions. It's creating your own language, whether it's between you and your family or just creating what they have already done and writing a story in inscriptions. Going off of the translations that our scientists and our archaeologists have come up with. So this is great. This is for you to be able to create your own story. Or if you want to even go further, create your own language. Create your language that your family can understand, or you and a sibling can understand, or you and a friend can understand. Start writing in it. See how far you can go with that. If you don't be discouraged. It's a hard task. Think about how every piece of writing actually works together and how you would create. In English, we have grammar. So we have other things in English, but think of how grammar is put together. Then you go to Spanish and it's completely different. Well, not completely different, but mostly different. So create your own language, create your own inscriptions, create your own story. I'd love to see what you have to create. Please send those to me. I would love to put them up on our YouTube channel or talk about them in our podcast. If you do a video, I'll stream it on both. I can't wait to see what you produce. But just to know, tomorrow we're going to be doing the Aztecs. These are the 3 main civilizations in the Mesoamerican area. That's Central America. Essential to understand because this is where our heritage is. Not just us. See, I came over mostly from Europe, but I also had some Cherokee. So either way, it's not really from my heritage. But if I go to Mexico and I live among people from Mexico, or even the culture of Mexico, or even the food I might eat, some of that can actually be traced all the way back to the Aztecs. I couldn't say from the Olmecs, but could be from the Aztecs, could be from the Maya, could be from other tribes in that area. Some of the things that we do are actually based on things that they did in the past. Try to find those connections. Try to see those connections every time you pick up a new chapter, every time you read a new paragraph about history. Those are the connections that are going to make this fun and exciting for you. What does it have to do with your life? Again, a few years ago, we thought the world was going to end. Not all of us, some of us thought the world was going to end because the Maya calendar was at an end. That's how it influences us. There are other things that they did that also influence us, including their urban. I mean, look at this. If you're looking at the YouTube video, look at how they structured their cities. Straight lines. They didn't have the technology that we have today. They had different technology. How much of those did we actually learn, and how much did we keep? All fascinating thoughts. All fascinating things to go through. Come up with your own theories. I'd love to hear some of those as well. Email me. You know my email. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Have a great day. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow actually. Take care. Bye.